Ethiopia is one of the world's oldest nations. It's a land once led by emperors and home to more than 80 ethnic groups. For almost 3 decades, it's been ruled by the same government, the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, or EPRDF. But this year, change has come to Ethiopia. This change has a name: Abiy Ahmed. There's a carnival-like atmosphere on the streets of Addis Ababa. It's almost like a welcome home parade for a victorious football team, except these people are here to see opposition leaders returning from exile.
Having this flag was a crime. Participating freely was a crime. But now, thanks to the new government, we're having this end, and I see a light at the end of the tunnel now.
Months ago, a scene like this wouldn't have been possible. The party these people support, the patriotic Ginbot 7, was a declared terrorist organisation. It was engaged in an armed struggle against the government. But it's laid down its weapons to support the reform process Abiy Ahmed started when he came to power in April.
For me, and maybe for most of my friends, is beginning of democratizing the whole country and creating a functional state that works for all of us equally.
At the Addis Ababa Stadium, the General Secretary of the PG7, Andogacho Sege, gets a roaring reception. He tells them the party stands with those people who want to change the nation, and he name-checks the Prime Minister. In May, Andogacho was still on death row for his role in the party. He is one of thousands of political prisoners released on Abiy's orders, and maybe one of the most famous. Now he wants to work with the Prime Minister to build a democratic nation.
He's played a very important role, Dr. Abiy. But the demand for change and the sustenance of the change doesn't depend only on him. You know, the people of Ethiopia will never allow anyone now to dictate them in the way they used to be dictated. You know, there would be an uprising that any dictator could not control using any means.
He says opposition groups have a key role to play.
There is really a likelihood that if we don't solve our problems, political and other problems, this country, this ancient country with long history, could simply crack up, you know, and it would be impossible to control it once that has happened. So the opposition should realize there is a need for patience, need for cooperation, to give priority to peace and stability and the rule of law.
I ask him what his greatest fear is.
I think it would be the ethnic division that was deliberately sowed by the past regime, and that how it would evolve, you know, in the coming months or a year, you know.
There have been sporadic bursts of mob violence between different ethnic groups in the past few months. The Prime Minister has called for calm. This is a fragile time for peace. To get an understanding of the divisions, you need to head to the Oromo region, which surrounds Addis Ababa. It's home to the Oromo people, one of the country's largest ethnic groups, which has long called for greater representation. These young men are keros, a term used to describe unmarried Oromo men. Men like them were at the forefront of demonstrations which ultimately led to a change in the country's leadership. Bonsa Ewanatu is a kero. He's proud of his role in mobilising other young Oromos to take part in the protests.
The Oromos have been asking for equal recognition of language, culture, their tradition, especially on their land.
In 2015, thousands rallied against the government's Addis Ababa master plan. It was designed to expand the capital by stretching into Oromia and taking away farmland. The protests were initially peaceful, but they turned deadly when authorities used force to try to stop them. It had the opposite effect. Demonstrations spread to other parts of the country as different ethnic groups rallied against government oppression. By 2018, the mass anti-government protests were still happening, leading to the resignation of the former Prime Minister, Haile Mariam Desalegn, and the ascension of Abiy. He is the first Oromo to hold the role of PM. For Bonsa, the fight isn't over, it's in a new phase.
I need to have a country where there is a democracy, where human rights is highly respected, a country where no one would not be beaten or thrown to jail because he expressed his own feeling. So we are in a transition. The better things are yet to come. So it's not an end. Our protest might change its strategy. I don't think there will be the blocking of the roads or the boycott of the market and so on. We will pressurize the government to look for the better solutions.
Farmers were one of the groups most affected by the land grabs. We're about to meet a farmer who used to own a lot of the land surrounding me, but because of government confiscations, he's lost most of it. His name is Girma Wakjire. Girma used to raise animals and grow wheat, chickpeas and maize. Now he's fenced in. He didn't want to give up his land. He says he felt pressured by the authorities and accepted a small amount of compensation. When he built his family compound years ago, he was surrounded by land. Now, everywhere he turns, there's construction. It's that kind of pain which Abiy acknowledged in his first address to Parliament. The 42-year-old has risen through the ranks of the EPRDF. The coalition has had an iron grip on the country for the last 27 years. Abiy is viewed as a reformer. He says his dream is to hold democratic elections by 2020.
የለውጡን ጊዜ አሁን ያለው የሚቀረው ጊዜ መምራት ያን ሊራዘም የመግፋት ፍላጎት እኔም ድርጅቱም እስካሁን የለውም። ወደፊት ሀሳቡ የሚነሳ ከሆነ በውይይት ለህዝብ ይሆናል።
Opening up the culture of one coalition rule to include outside voices doesn't come without risk. In June, 2 people died when a grenade was thrown into a crowd after Abiy had finished speaking. This is the season of renewal in Ethiopia. The country follows its own calendar. The new year only began in September. There's more to celebrate than usual, like the prospect of transforming from authoritarian rule to an open state. This is Meskel Square. It's one of the key gathering places in Addis Ababa. Just a few days ago, it was packed with tens of thousands of opposition supporters, a sign of the changes in Ethiopia. Now it's back to business as usual, with people going about their daily lives. But for many of them, they're hoping that they've entered a new era in the country. Journalist Eskinder Nega was jailed several times under the old EPRDF regime. His wife, another journalist, was also imprisoned and gave birth to their son in jail. They now live in the US. But Eskinder has returned to relaunch a magazine which was closed down under the old government.
What we have discovered by trying to work as independent journalists in the country is that we could not create an island of freedom in a sea of dictatorship. To enjoy and to work as journalists, as independent journalists, as free journalists, there has to be democracy. So whether we like it or not, we have to fight for democracy.
He says the country should follow South Africa's model of creating a transitional government.
Political party, particularly one that has an authoritarian past, cannot be a credible force in building, in creating the independent institutions that the country needs to engage in a free election. So we need a coalition of the major political parties to create that credible environment for a free and fair election. Without a free and fair election, it will be back to square one for us.
The optimism around Abiy is riding high. People want him to succeed because it could mean lasting change for the nation. Bekele Gerba is another former political prisoner. I ask him what he thinks about the Prime Minister.
For some reason, my inner side tells me that he's a good person, he's a reformist, and I think he is serious about reforming. He doesn't have that history of corruption, and he looks like as a clean person. And even though he was part of the security when I was sent to prison, I still sense that he's one of those people whose hands are clean.
But Bekele is also wary.
Many governments in this country, at the beginning of their reign, they are usually progressive. They look like okay. But as time goes on, and when they think that they are going to be pushed out of office, they will begin to resist, change the laws, and become, and become brutal.
Abiy came to office 6 months ago. His image can be found across the capital. It's not the government keeping his picture up. It's the people. Another sign of the optimism surrounding this young leader and the expectation that he can transform this old nation. Natalie Poyhonen in Addis Ababa for the Newsmakers.